Look, let's talk about what happened yesterday. There was traffic chaos, airline traffic chaos, all over the country because of that breakdown by the NATS system.
Yeah.
One would like to think things like a computer breaking down when it controls airlines and airspace would be really quickly rectified, but it wasn't, was it?
It was quickly rectified in that it took them 3 hours to fix, but the knock-on effect couldn't be fixed quickly. They basically had to switch from doing the automated, which are all computerised, to manual. And if they're doing manual flight plans, the safety has to be number one.
Yeah.
And that's why they had to take their time, and that's why planes that were in the air they had to deal with, but the ones that were on the ground, they stayed on the ground, obviously for safety.
Yeah.
So the knock-on effect is that the planes and the crews are not in the right places, and also the passengers aren't in the right places. So it's very unfortunate. It's the first time in 10 years that something like this has happened. Really bad timing for that bank holiday.
Oh.
A lot of people,
my goodness
and not
me.
just holiday makers, but people who have really important appointments, or they're flying home for a funeral, or they're flying home for a medical appointment or something.
And you've stretched it, you've stretched
Yeah.
that trip to the last minute thinking, I'm just going to make it back into work or whatever it might be, and sadly it didn't happen. 200,000 passengers, flights were cancelled. Nick, what's going to happen to them today for the rest of the week? How does that look?
It's a catch-up game. And I think, look, as Isla rightly said, this is only the second time it's happened in 10 years. So you do literally have to move to pieces of paper and plotting routes, and safety must come first. Where I do think there is a conversation to be had, though, is how some of the airlines have responded in certain airports. And we've been taking calls, you won't be surprised to hear, we've been taking calls all morning about this. And again, it is not the airline's fault. I appreciate it. But these are customers. And let's be honest, if you're fortunate enough to have been travelling before COVID, you'll have noticed there's been quite an increase in the fares that we pay to go on our summer holiday. I don't think it's unfair to expect that when, again, not their fault, but when EasyJet, Jet2, Ryanair, British Airways, whoever it might be, when this happens, they actually field staff who help them. And handing out bits of paper with a website address or a phone number that you know is going to be deluged. And I've had callers tell me today that they spent 4 hours, and in some instances they got to the airport before they were told that the flights were cancelled, and then you're scrambling around for a bed and breakfast or whatever you can get. That's where I think a conversation has to be had. You can't blame NATS. They did what they had to do. They preserved safety. That is the most important thing. I think you look to the airlines.
OK, the thing is, Nick, as you said quite rightly, it's not the airline's fault. So the European Union EU 261 doesn't necessarily cover the passengers, which means that they could end up out of pocket. Our travel correspondent, Simon Calder, is with us. Simon, is that correct, that EU 261 or UK 261 now won't help people?
Absolutely right, Andy. Let me explain exactly what the rules are for a situation like this. And I'm afraid, I was talking to Nick earlier, I've just learned in the past few minutes that the number of cancellations yesterday was actually over 1,500. That represents 250,000 people waking up today where they didn't intend to be. A shocking number. And those people are all entitled to the same things. Under the European air passenger rights rules, they can expect to be flown back as soon as they possibly can, as soon as there's a seat available. The bad news is that they all go to the back of the queue. So flights going out today, and by the way, we've got at least 200 cancellations today because planes and pilots are out of position. So they go to the back of the queue. There may be some rescue flights operated, but the airline has to get you back in whatever possible way it can as swiftly as possible, including spending hundreds of pounds buying tickets on rival carriers. There's also the entitlement to hotels, and Nick was touching on this. Your flight is cancelled, you can't get back on the same day. The airline is obliged to put you up in a hotel. We've seen time and again that that doesn't happen. I think we can cut the airlines a bit of slack, because yesterday was just absolutely disastrous. But even so, they've got to pay for hotel bills for people who were lucky enough to find somewhere to stay other than the floor of Gatwick or Manchester Airport. And they need to pay for your meals as well. And if you touch down in, say, Manchester, when you were hoping to get to Edinburgh, they're in it for the train fare, although TransPennine Express and LNER say if you do land in the wrong place and it's on one of our lines, we'll take you to your final destination free of charge. A nice gesture.
But Simon, to be clear, looking after you because they cancelled your flight is one thing, compensation is another.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way any airline is going to give you any cash compensation. That's because it's evidently an extraordinary circumstance, as we were hearing, hasn't happened for 10 years, and it's not their fault. So they're not going to give you any compensation. Your travel insurance might give you a sort of modest token, I don't know, £25 for 12 hours of disruption. So have a look there. More deeply, the Civil Aviation Authority has just put out quite a crisply worded statement about it and saying they're expecting to understand from the Air Traffic Control Service, NAT, exactly what went wrong. It's possible that if it's established that the air traffic control system was not being managed with reasonable care and skill, then you could expect that it would be possible to claim for instance, lost wages direct from the airline, from the air traffic control system, not from the airline at all. But these sort of consequential losses, it's a tricky picture, and I wouldn't want to raise anybody's hopes. That's just the one possible bit of good news in an absolutely miserable picture for so many people.
I think, obviously, like you say, it is miserable for so many people, Simon. And obviously, people are desperate to get home, whether that be, their families. And you just think of people in the airport just at despair. Yeah. How long will this take to rectify itself? Are we talking there could be if you've been cancelled yesterday, there could be a possible flight today, or are we talking...
I know Simon's in the Baltic Sea. So, Simon, correct me if I'm wrong as well. Airlines have a thing where they leave displaced passengers displaced, and passengers who are entitled to fly today, they get first option on flying today. Oh. That's correct, isn't it, Simon? So, therefore, if the flights are all busy today, tomorrow and Thursday...
It's effectively a new flight.
You don't get a flight till Friday unless there is some sort of rescue flight. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. You go to the back of the queue, and anybody who's lucky enough to be on one of the many hundreds of flights today which aren't cancelled, is just going to travel as normal, maybe pick up a delay here or there. And right now, the airlines are extraordinarily heavily booked, especially coming back from the Mediterranean. This coming weekend is going to be incredibly busy, and just finding space for people is going to be so difficult, which is why I expect airlines like EasyJet and Ryanair, possibly British Airways, if they possibly can, Wednesday, Thursday, put on a few rescue flights. For instance, suddenly the Rhodes to Edinburgh flight was cancelled yesterday. That's 180 people who are many hundreds of miles from Scotland and need to get back. And there's absolutely no way they can catch a train home from there. So it's messy, but... some people are telling me, we've been told no flights till the 7th of September. Don't worry, that won't happen. These things do tend to sort themselves out in a few days, but it's still going to be miserable. Sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us in the Baltic Sea. It reminds me, Nick, we should say welcome back, because we missed you last week.
Yes,
you were on holiday.
I was.
So welcome back. I mean,
I was going
to say, you got the... I don't know if you flew anywhere, but you got back, yes. Just in time.
I was lucky. I flew on the Friday. It was sheer chance, but just referencing what Simon said, a lot of people waking up where they shouldn't be. The last time that happened to me, it took 7 days to get back through the front door. So we just have to see. Just have to see how that goes.
Any questions?
Nothing to do with the transport.